Good evening, everybody. Tonight we are going to talk about APIs for beginners. So I will really define exactly what an API is. And my goal is for you to, when you leave this building, to better understand what's an API and what's it's important to have an API as a company and how you can use it in your daily life to automate some tasks. So let's start with the word. So API means Application Programming Interface. And basically you have to read it backwards because it's an interface used by programs to interact with an application. So let's define those three words: interface, programs, and application. So what's an interface? Let's take this phone, for instance. Let's take this metaphor. So the phone will be the application. So what's the interface of the phone? Well, basically the interface is the stuff you can interact with the application. For the phone, it's like this rotary part you can turn to make a number. And maybe you have heard about user interface. Usually we talk about user interface because it's a human using the interface. But here, when you're talking about API, we don't really want to focus on a user, on a human, but on a program. So basically, it's not a human who is going to use an API, it's a machine, it's a robot, it's a script. You can call it with a lot of names, but basically it's code which is running on a computer. So here I'm just taking a WALL-E, so robot, because you can imagine with a little robot hand, turning the phone rotary part. So this is for defining the three words in API. Again, as a human, you don't interact with APIs. You write code, but you don't interact yourself. So basically, we need developers who are going to write the code to talk to the API. So when you use your applications on your smartphones, you're using applications which has been written by developers, which are using APIs. So you are using APIs, but through the application and through the code which has been written. Okay? So if you're a developer, you can interact with API, but as a human, you cannot. So I really like this kind of, like plumbing photography for developers, because a developer's job is usually, taking parts which are already working quite well and plumbing them together to create a new product. And we'll see examples of that in this talk. So again, with the vocabulary, because it's quite important in this topic, APIs expose something which is useful. Let's take this API. What does it expose? Yeah, so electricity, AC, DC. Okay? And on the other hand, you have developers which write programs which consume APIs. So APIs will serve something, and the program will consume the API. And we can take this example. When you plug something in the plug outlet, you get some electricity, and you get your, I don't know, what you've plugged working. Okay? And it can be really trivial to look at this example, but it's really important because here, it's not English plug, I think it's American, but the thing is that you have a standard. So I can build something which works with electricity. If I follow the standard, I know I can sell it to the market, and people will be able to use it in their home. And it's really important to understand this kind of standard so that you can, you don't reinvent the wheel each time. You don't have a power outlet in your home for, I don't know, Siemens or Sony or etc. for different vendors. You have just one. And when we talk about API, we're going to have a standard below the API concept. And the standard will be HTTP, in fact, so the web platform. So here I'm going to talk about web APIs, because when you talk about API and you know what you're talking about, you know that web APIs is just a subset of APIs. You have APIs on your computer. For instance, when I type on a key or when I click on the trackpad, there is an API on my operating system which is called and which gives the information to the focused program on my computer that something has happened. So APIs are everywhere, even in your computer. So on this talk, we're just talking about web API. API you can talk to through HTTP, as we're going to see. So HTTP is just like the protocol for the web. You do HTTP every day. When you go to Google, you're doing HTTP requests. I don't know if you know this website. It's mainly for developers, so I guess you don't know it. It's a website where you can find any API by any vendor. So we can go to it. And it has like 1,000 and 1,000 of APIs listed. So for instance, you have the first API, Google Maps on the left, Twitter, YouTube, Flickr, Facebook. So big names you already know. And they do have API for developers. Amazon product advertising, etc. And you can filter by any category you want. You can see like this is a huge list, and APIs. It's not just one or two APIs in the web, it's like a huge directory of APIs. So if you want to browse APIs, you can just go to this website after this talk to have a look at what exists. We are going to take some examples and to take the most used APIs in the world. So let's take the first one. Google Maps JavaScript API v3. So what does this API expose? Which service does it expose? Yeah.
Is it for like filling the map, so you send over some coordinates and then it appears on the map?
Yeah, so basically it's something like that. You are the web developer and you want to integrate a map on your website, and you don't have any map. You don't have a map engineer in your team, so you go to Google and you ask, "Can I use this API?" And for instance, Airbnb does it. So everybody knows Airbnb, okay? When you search for an apartment, on the right you get a map with nice, icons for the location of each map. So here, Airbnb didn't build a map system. They used something from Google through the API. And it goes further because you see, like the pink icons, they are not the standard Google icon, right? The standard Google icon is more red and more sharp. So here, Google allows developers to change the way the map looks through the API. And here the change is really subtle. It's just an icon change. But you can go really further. There is a website which is called Snazzy Map, and it showcases different implementation of the map. So basically, you just change a line of code when you integrate it into your HTML, and you can get nice looking maps like that. So for instance, more like a green, yellow theme. You can see New York. You can emphasize the river, etc. You can also put the river in red if you want. So you can completely mix up stuff. So let's take a red map. This one. Okay, so if you want, you can have New York with the red river. So if you can really integrate your Google Map inside your website. And if your design is red and you want a red map, you can. You can also remove the city name. You can remove the street names. If you're building, so here you can see a map without any street name. So it's really, really nice looking. Okay, and basically, how do you implement that on your website? So here you see some code. You just copy this code, paste it at the right place, obviously, in your code, and it works. That's it. So in the API, Google Maps allows you to customize a lot. So that's really, really nice. Another thing is that this API is free. So Airbnb, as a developer, you can just build a website and put a map on your website for free. There's a limit, like maybe 300,000 requests per day. So it's like quite a lot if you're starting something. And why, in your opinion, why Google provides this API for free?
It's marketing overall. Just marketing their services, their brands.
So yeah, basically to showcase the Google brand and people think of Google even when you're not on Google. Yeah, that's one answer. But you can go further than that.
Content, like data information, users information,
Yeah, so
user habits.
you have this kind of tracking because when I browse Airbnb, I'm not just sending data information to Airbnb, I'm also sending stuff to Google because I display the Google map. So Google has a report of what people are doing on Airbnb. That's right. The thing is, if you have, this is Airbnb website, and here, this component is someone else. So it's like a Trojan horse for Google. It can push advertisement through this window. Inside other websites, they can push anything they want. If they want to display like, you know, if I zoom in the map and I have a hotel or a restaurant, I want to advertise as Google, I can do it because, you know, people want me to show the map. So it's a way to push their content and their ads, not only on their website, but on every website who wants to display maps. That's why it's free. Because the reach they have for ads is really great. Another example, yeah, I don't have a slide for that, but YouTube. YouTube has an API. So you can include a YouTube video on any website, on your blog, for instance. And it's the same idea, it's free, so that YouTube videos are played everywhere, not only on YouTube. And so ads can be played on other websites. Okay? That's why it's free again. So Twilio. Who knows about Twilio? Okay, 2 people. So it's perfectly normal. It's an API dedicated to developers, not to end users. So Twilio is just a service to send text messages. And it's used by Uber or by Airbnb or OpenTable, etc. So for instance, when you order Uber, you get a text message when the car is arriving. Okay? And this text message, it's not a Uber engineer somewhere in San Francisco waiting for the car to arrive and sending you the text message. All right? It's automatic. And it's through an API. So Twilio does that. You can just ask Twilio, this is a phone number, this is a text message, please send it. So Uber, again, is a client. Why do you need such a service? Why does this company exist at all?
Because it used to be really complicated to talk to every network operator in the world.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, before Twilio, so like 10 years ago, maybe less, you had to integrate with every carrier in the world. Like you want to send text in the UK, you have to talk to O2, to Orange, to Vodafone, etc. And then, so it's already 4 or 5 implementations, so a lot of work for your engineers. And then you want to send text message to France, to Belgium, etc. So more networks to integrate. And in the end, you have specific code for every network you want to integrate with, which is quite painful. It's code you have to maintain because stuff changes, it breaks, you have to do all the work. So Twilio, they did all this hard work for you, and they expose an API so that you send the text message, and then they handle the hard work of sending it through the different networks in different countries. So they build it once, and they sell their API, and so you don't have any work to do. With this kind of companies, you can ask your engineer in the morning, I want to send text message with my website, and in the afternoon, it's already in production. Because it's really, really easy. And the same happened for payment, for instance. So maybe you know about Stripe or PayPal before that. PayPal or Stripe, what they did was to ease the payment process for a developer. So they market their product to developers. So Twilio, Stripe, etc., it's stuff which is underneath. You don't really know about it, but it really powers the modern web. And that's a way to build companies and startups really fast without implementing hard stuff like sending text messages. Okay? Any question on that? Great. So let's implement something. Let's play the role of a developer. And we assume that we are a timeout developer, so the timeout website, and we want GPS coordinates of venues to show next gig in town on a map. Okay, let's build this feature. That's what the developer is required to build. So the developer, the engineer, won't be the one putting all the GPS coordinates of all venues in London in the database. There is a content manager for that. But the content manager, he doesn't know the GPS coordinates of venues. What does he know? What does she know? Yeah, the address. So he or she will enter addresses in the database, and that's it. So we want to build something which will be able to take these addresses and discover GPS coordinates so that we can then show a nice map with markers on the map where venues are. Okay? So obviously there's an API for that. And this API, again, it's something by Google, but it's not the same as the previous one. It's not the Google JavaScript Maps API. It's a geocoding API. And basically, how does it work? It's really, really simple. Let's say you have this address, okay? And you will call the API. We'll do that in a minute. And you will get something like that back. And this thing at the bottom is called JSON. Who knows about JSON? Okay, nice. So you see it's quite easy to read. You have a location key. You have lat, LNG keys, which are maybe latitude and longitude. And so we will go from this address to this structured format. And how do you do that? You call the API. And how do you call the API? So you do it with an HTTP request. An HTTP request, it's something your browser does when you type a URL in the address bar and type enter. So if I open Chrome and I type HTTP google.com, I'm doing an HTTP request. Okay? Let's do an HTTP request for the geocoding API. So I don't know it by heart, sorry. So this is the one. It's maps.googleapis.com/maps/apis/geocode/JSON, and then you pass a parameter to the API, which is the address you want to look for, and that's it. So let's copy this URL into Chrome, and that's it, we got the answer. So we got the answer, we've got a key address component, and we've got a key geometry which contains the location, latitude, and longitude. Okay? So we just did an API request. So you see, you get GPS coordinates, so as a developer, you will be able to store that in a database so that you don't have to ask every time, obviously. And you can see that you get an address components key which contains the parsed address. So you get the street number, the route, the locality, etc. Information you could store in the database as well if you want. Okay? So if I change and I put another address, something in Paris, again, I will get GPS coordinates, okay, and other information. So for this API, so I can do this. I can do the request without being logging in, but there is a limit, which is a limit you can reach, maybe 3,000 requests per day. So it's quite low, and this one is sold by Google, and they do make money with this one. And Google is not the only API provider to convert an address to GPS coordinates. There are other providers. I don't remember the names, but you can look for that. So basically, the keyword is geocoding. So you look at geocoding API, and you should get other results. Yeah, so this one maybe, I don't know. Then you have to look at the documentation again. So I won't do the demonstration, but just for you know that there is not only Google playing on the API market for geocoding. So who's calling the API, the geocoding API? So basically, the developer will build something like that, just a form where you can enter a new venue, and the content manager will be able to add a name, an address, and click on the button, create this venue. Okay? So fairly simple mockup, nothing fancy here. So I complete this form and I submit it, and then it will redirect me to this page. This page, which is the venue page, where I display details of the venue. So right now, I just have the address and GPS coordinates. But when did I get the GPS coordinate? It's not the content manager who is doing the API request. It's the timeout server. So it can seem a bit complicated, don't panic. You can read this from top to bottom, left to right. So how does the request go? You have the content manager which submits a form to the timeout server. The timeout server, it's a web application receiving the form input. It reads the form input, and it will ask the Google Geocoding API what's the coordinates for the address. The Google API will answer with latitude and longitude, so that you can store in the database on the timeout server something, and then build the HTML back to the content manager to display this information. So here the API call is over there, okay? This is the API call, and it's between timeout and Google. The end user, the content manager, does not know about this API call. Only the developer knows. Okay? That's why some APIs are never heard by end users, like Twilio or etc. So again, I already said it, APIs are consumed by programs, and we are not done yet, because right now we have just a page which shows GPS coordinates, but we need to display a map with markers. So we will use the previous API we saw, which is the Google Map JavaScript API, to show a map and put the marker on the right GPS coordinate. Okay? So for this feature, we'll be using two APIs, one server side, which is a geocoding API, and one client side, so one which is used in the browser in JavaScript to display a map. Okay? Make sense? No question?
Just one question.
Yeah.
What happens when there's an exception? I guess there must be multiple systems.
It's like you have an address. Yeah, so that's a good question. If the content manager puts a false address or something where it's missing, sometimes the Google Geocoding API cannot do the work, and it will answer with an error code. We can try, actually. I don't know what's the error, but let's put, I don't know, 16. My address is 16. Okay, so apparently there's something with 16. But you see, what's interesting is you have a results array this time, and you get several suggestions. So here Google tries its best to understand what 16 is. You know, it's like the autocomplete algorithm they have when you type keystrokes and you get suggestion. Here you have the same for an API. So as a developer, you will receive different results, and then it's up to you to decide what you want to do with them. For instance, you could display the suggestion back to the user, so you can choose from the suggestions, or you can just discard those and say to the user, please enter a precise address, until you have a geocoding which fits exactly one result. It's completely up to the implementer, to the developer. Okay? So I don't know if we can make this API fail, because even with 16, I don't know, maybe with the letter A.
I tried one.
Yeah. Which one?
It says, so I put an address that I know, I just put the wrong number.
Okay.
At the bottom, it returns partial match true.
Yeah.
So which might be the error code?
It means that it finds something, but it's not sure about. So then you have to read the API documentation to understand all these kind of corner cases, so that you can react accordingly as a developer. That's hard work. I mean, when you integrate an API as a developer, usually you make it work in less than an hour, and you're really proud of what you did. and then you spend 1 week to fix all the corner cases that user find or your product manager finds or QA finds, which is the painful part of the job. But yes, you just have to test it to find what you want to fix. Okay. Okay, I said that. So let's look at some code. Just one slide of code tonight. Second feature I want to implement as a timeout developer is the ability to send a text message if a gig is cancelled, or if I don't know, if a concert is cancelled, etc. So there will be four steps. I know I will be using Twilio. I won't be sending the text messages by myself. So I sign up to Twilio. So my email, my password, my credit card, because I will have to pay for that one. And then Twilio will give me credentials. It will give me an API key and an API password. And it's really important to have those information because when you're going to do the API call, you need to tell Twilio, I am Sebastian from Le Wagon, and please charge me on my account. Otherwise, Twilio doesn't know who to charge. Okay, so if you try to do an API call to Twilio without credentials, it won't work at all. So once you have all this information, you can write this 8 lines of Ruby code. So let's just go really, really fast. First, you require a third-party library, which Twilio developers have provided, so which is open source and you can get for free. Then you store credentials into 2 variables, which is like account SID and auth token. So this is the information you get from the Twilio dashboard. And you can think of it as your email and password. It's a way for Twilio API to know who you are. Okay? It's like your email on Facebook and your password. Then you instantiate a client, and we have these 3 lines where we send a message. So we say, this is from this number. So when you sign up to Twilio, you get a phone number to send stuff. It's not your own phone number, obviously. It's not the developer's phone number. You have the 2, so the recipient phone number and the body, so the message content. And just with these 8 lines of code, you're ready to send a text message to the world, thanks to the power of APIs and Twilio service, and your credit card, obviously. So you see, it's really, really easy. And that's why I told you that when you integrate APIs, when you work with API as a developer, you can really make it work really quickly. For payment and Stripe, it's the same idea. It's a bit more of work, but in one day, usually with Stripe, you can get a payment working on your website. And then you run the code, obviously. So, yeah.
Where would you put things like the authorization token so that it wouldn't be displayed to the user?
Here, this code will be run server-side, and so the user won't see it at all. It's something you keep behind your firewall on your server. Obviously, it's not JavaScript code which is run in your browser. It's something server-side.
API is generally compatible with lots of languages or just a few?
So to call an API, we've seen it's just an HTTP request. So it's completely language agnostic. You can do an HTTP request in any programming language. You can do it in Ruby, in PHP, in Java. There's no limitation. So for the client, for the code calling the API, as it's just an HTTP request, which is a web standard, you don't have any requirement on the client side, not at all. So you can call this API with any programming language, any program. So let's go further again and talk about webhooks. So who knows about webhooks? Nobody. Okay. It's great. No, webhooks, it's great. So what's a webhook? So basically, you all know the F5 key. So on the Mac, it's Command R to reload a page, okay? And you've used that maybe to get, I don't know, sport results, or when you want to buy a ticket for a U2 concert, and you just press F5 until it opens up, and usually just scroll down, you know, like you cannot buy any tickets because there are too many requests. So obviously, it's your fault because you did too many requests to the server. Or maybe it's the other way one, the engineers on the other side didn't do their work correctly. Either way, it's not an efficient way to request information, right? The efficient way is, the efficient way is to go the other way around. So let's say I want to build this feature. I want to build a feature where I get a nice synced up list of my meetup attendees. So I have a database, and I want to push information in this database. And basically, if I do the F5 strategy where I call the stuff every 10 seconds, it's expensive for the Meetup server. So Meetup has an API, which if I ask Meetup, so who are the attendees for this particular Meetup, it will answer with a big JSON with every information. So what I could do is to ask every 10 seconds this information and compare the answer of the new API call to the previous one. And if it's something has changed, then I know I have a new attendee. Make sense? Again, Meetup won't be really pleased because if I do a call every 10 seconds and if a lot of developers do that, they will have a lot of load on the server. So I'm sure they can handle it, but again, it's not really efficient. What we want to do, we want to apply the Hollywood principle. So what's it? It's don't call us, we'll call you. Basically, when you go to a job interview, so you do the job interview, etc. If the next day you call the interviewer or the recruiter, and 1 hour later you call the recruiter, am I hired? And 1 hour later you call the recruiter, am I hired, etc. I'm sure you won't get hired, okay? So it's not efficient. But in the programming world, in the server world, you can do that. You can call every 10 seconds meetup to get the list of attendees, and it will always answer. It won't shut you off. Except if it crumbles down because of server load. So we want to apply this principle. So basically, we want to have what we call a webhook. So it's a way to tell Meetup, please Meetup, as soon as you have a new attendee who RSVPs, call me. Tell me there's someone new. I will just wait for your call. So it's like you give Meetup your phone number, and Meetup will call you each time a new attendee appears.
So it's a push instead of a call.
Yeah, it's like a push message. You are all aware of push message on your iPhones. It's exactly that. But a push message on your iPhone is for you. It's for a user, it's for your human. A webhook is pushing information to another server, not to a human. It's not an email. They're not sending an email. So basically, they're just doing an HTTP request in the other way. So as a developer, you need to build what we call the webhook URL, so destination, where Meetup will be able to push the information. So for incoming request. So basically, you become an API for Meetup. You become the one who is being called by the robot. And you have this schema. So if my application, the one I'm building, the one I'm responsible for, does a call to Meetup, it's an API call. But when Meetups want to push me information, it's an API call. You're just sending an HTTP request, but it's called a webhook because you see it from the point of view of the application. It's the same as when you have money in the bank and money coming in and coming out, it's just money transfer. But from your point of view, it's really different. Okay? For the application, it's the same. So let's go further. Let's take an example. We are going to use two services, and we will assume you are not developers, but you know about APIs and webhooks, which you do now. Okay? So first, Wufoo. Who doesn't know about Wufoo? Okay, so maybe Typeform. You know Typeform? Okay, so Wufoo is like the grandfather of Typeform. It's like a way to build nice forms without any knowledge, just with drag and drop. So we'll take this one. Because let's say we have a website and we want to put a form on this website to capture leads visiting our website. And we don't have access to the code because we don't know how to code. So we are going to use Wufoo as a service. And then we are going to use Trello, and who doesn't know about Trello? Okay, so Trello is like a product management system. Really nice one. You can do anything with it. We will see that in a moment. So basically, we will just create a board in Trello, so a way where we will put all the leads so that our sales team can reach out to the leads, okay, and implement like a sales workflow, like with deals, so going through a funnel, etc. So we get leads from Wufoo and push those leads to Trello, okay? So let's do that. So first, I'm going to create a fake email address. Do you know Guerilla Mail? It's a nice service. So basically, when you want a disposable address, when you want to try something out and you don't want to reveal your email address, but you still need an email address because usually they send you confirmation link to activate your account, you can use services like that. Okay? So here I get my temporary email address, which I can copy. And if I get emails on this address, they will show up underneath. So first, let's go to Wufoo and sign up. So Wufoo has a free plan, which is handy. So this is my email address, my password, and for the custom Wufoo URL, I will just use this part. So I create my account, and I will create my first form to capture leads on my website. So let's click on New Form. And on the left, you get all the parts of your form you can use. And on the right, this is your form. So I will just drag and drop from left to right the part of the forms. So which information do I need for my lead, from my lead? So I want the lead name, maybe the lead email, okay, and some paragraph text to ask him about what he needs. Okay, so great lead form. You can give it a title and etc. So there's lots of customization. You can make a field required, so they cannot submit without filling it in. So let's require everything. Okay. Okay. So makes sense. You build a form really easily. Okay. And I will save this form. So let's try this form. Let's try it. To try it, we can go to the share part. And basically, they give me a link I can use. So I can send an email, for instance, to people telling them, please fill this form. Or I can embed this form in my website. So to embed it, I will have other code. So you have two scenarios possible. So here I don't have any website to play with. I will just play with URLs they give me. Okay, so let's go to this URL. So we get our nice form. And I can fill this form to try it. So let's say Boris is the lead. Okay, so we submit the form, and it seems to work. Okay, so here we are in the Wufoo free plan, so obviously they want to push the product to your users anyway. Let's go back to the dashboard, and you see you have a new entry. So someone's actually filled up your form. You can go to the entries part, and at the bottom here you have all the entries, so all the people who filled the form. And if I click on it, I can get this information. Okay, so the Wufoo and the form part is done. I'm ready to use it. Any question on that part? It's quite easy to get. Okay. So now we are not really happy with this dashboard for the sales team, for the sales guys. We want the sales guys to use Trello. So let's use Trello. Again, I will use a fake account. Okay, and I will create a new board. Let's say leads. Okay. So, for those who don't know Trello, it's a way to create lists. You create lists, so usually you have a workflow. So for instance, here I will have my inbox. So for deals which have just arrived, I will have like the closing board, the closed, and the lost. Okay, so I have four lists. Sorry, four lists, and I will be able to drag and drop my cards from one list to the other one. So, for instance, if I have Romain as a lead and Edouard, let's say I'm talking to Romain, so I'm closing the deal. And if it's closed, it will go there. And if I'm talking to Edouard and I lost the deal, it will go there. Okay, so you have a way to easily handle workflows. And it's completely customizable. For each card, you can click on it and have a nice details of the card. So you can add a description in here. You can add comments, so you can collaborate with other people. You can add tags. So for instance, I don't know if it's for product 1. I can create the tag product 1, which is green, and add it to the guy. Okay? So you can see what this tool is about. So we have this nice dashboard, but right now I'm getting leads from Wufoo, and I have no way to having them in Trello, right? They are not showing up in Trello. So one way will be to have someone do the job for you, like going to each Wufoo entry every day, copying the information, like that, click in, like, okay, so where's the email? Okay, so this is painful to watch and to do, okay? You don't want someone to do that. I know that people have those kind of jobs still, but you don't want to do that anymore, okay? What you want to do is having the stuff showing up as soon as it shows up in Wufoo. But again, Wufoo and Trello don't really talk to each other. So let's go back to the slide. Remember, when I was talking about Webhook, we had a service, so service A, which push data as soon as it's available. So for Meetup, it was, I have a new attendee, I will push this information to the webhook. And the API, it's the other way around, it exposes the method to read, create, or update data. So here, who will play the role of webhook and who will play the role of API? And we have Wufoo and Trello. Yeah, so Wufoo will push form entries as soon as they get it to Trello, and Trello has an API to create cards. If Trello didn't have an API, you couldn't do this kind of work. So you need something which will receive, on the one hand, Wufoo information and push that information to the Trello API. So you need a middleman. This middleman, you could build it. You could write some code to build it. But that's not what we are going to do, because I said you don't need to know about code. So we are going to use Zapier. So Zapier is this middleman. Basically, it's middleman for any APIs on the market. They implement like more than 300 APIs and webhooks. And the idea is that you will create an automation where you will get information from Wufoo and push it to Trello. So let's do that. Let's create a fake account on Zapier. They must have a ton of fake accounts. Sorry for them. Anyway, it works. So they have an onboarding tutorial I will just skip. No thanks. And I will build my first Zap with you. So what's a Zap? A Zap, in the Zapier terminology, on the one hand, you have the trigger, and on the other one, we have the action in reaction to the trigger. So we said the trigger came from Wufoo. So we choose Wufoo. And here, for each application, you may have several triggers. So here for Wufoo, you just have one trigger, which is a new entry appears. So let's select this one. OK. Then I need to connect my Wufoo account to Zapier so that they can know about what's happening. So basically, I almost need to give them my password. So let's connect it. So I give my email. You see, I give my password as well. So you have to trust the guys. So 3TEDI. OK. Is it working? It works. So now that Wufoo is connected to Zapier, I need to choose which form I want to use for the trigger. Because in Wufoo, I may have several forms. So I just click on this drop-down, and you see my form appears, the leads form. So I select this leads form. OK. So the trigger is configured. Let's go to the action. So which service do I use for the action? Trello. OK. And which action do I want to do? You see that I have a lot of possibilities. I can create a card, I can create a list, I can even create a board. I guess creating a board for each lead is a bit too much. So let's just create a card, OK? So again, I need to connect my Trello accounts. That's something I need to do once, because if I do other zaps later, they will have registered all my accounts. So I don't have to do that again. So let's connect the account. And here you can see it's better. Trello does not, I don't have to give my Trello password to Zapier. I just authenticate with the Trello third party. So let's allow that. Test, it works. So for my action, here I have a lot of things to configure to tell which board, which card, what do I put in the card, etc. So first I need to specify to Zapier this is going to be, the card will be created in the leads board. Which list? Well, the inbox list. And you can see this is crazy to have an interface from a third-party service which builds depending completely on data from other services you've just created. And this is like the power of API behind all this. It's crazy. So let's select inbox. Which name for the card? What do I put as name for the card? The name of the card is the thing you see here. So here, for instance, the name is Boris Payard. So what can I put in the name field?
The name of the user from.
Yeah, which is coming from? From the form, exactly. So here, I can click on this button, and you can see I can get each field and create the name from the field. So I will say this is, I want the first name, and I want the last name as a card name. OK, what do I put as a description?
The email address of comments, I suppose.
Yeah, so other information I got from the form, obviously, otherwise I will lose them. So this is the email, and let's put that. OK. OK? I didn't forget any information. If I want, I could add a label automatically. I won't do that. I could add a member, so you can collaborate on cards. I could have checklist items, etc. So let's go on. OK, and let's try it. Yeah, so here they created a test, and normally if I go back to my Trello, yes, you can see the second card has been created. Okay, so apparently the zap is working, so let's click on finish. It's pushing Wufoo leads to Trello. And the zap is on. Okay, so here the zap is now working. I can see it on my dashboard, it's working. And I can try it out. So let's go back to the Wufoo form. So let's put everything in Lost. I want to show you side by side the Trello and the form. Okay. So a prospect received an email with this link to my form, and he wants to fill it. Okay, so he submits the form, and let's look on the right. Finger crossed. It should work. Yes, okay, it appeared. Okay, it's like 5 seconds later. So it went to the Wufoo dashboard, to the Wufoo database. Then Wufoo sent the webhook call to Zapier. Zapier read the Zap configuration and called the Trello API to create the card. And bam, you don't have any more manual work to do. And you can see I get the email, I get the description, etc. So I'm ready to collaborate with other people thanks to this little hack. Okay? So if you want to see how this works on Wufoo, you can go to the notification here, because basically you can just set up an inbox notification every time you get a new Wufoo entry, you receive an email. And here on the right, you can see there is a webhook notification setup. And this is not something I did. You did not see me do that. So it's Zapier. So Zapier called a Wufoo API to create a webhook. Yeah.
Are you able to see the code in Zapier?
Which code?
The API that you created. Is there a way of seeing?
If you want to see what Wufoo sends you as in the webhook, for instance.
So how it's actually constructed.
Which part? Trello or Wufoo?
Well, I mean the entire chain. You'll be able to see.
Well, you don't really see exactly the code, but if you go to the dashboard, you can see that Wufoo pushes information to Trello. That's what you see. I mean, you don't see underneath. But if you want to, as a developer, receive the information from Wufoo, receive the webhook, and deal with it yourself, you can do it as well. You can do it. I can show you maybe if you want. There is a service like Request Bin, for instance, and it's a way to debug webhook. Basically, it creates an endpoint which the webhook will call, and you will see what the webhook receives without building the code yourself. So let's create a request bin. So I get a URL that I can give to Wufoo. If I go back to Wufoo and I create a new webhook, okay, and I save. So now I have two webhooks for my Wufoo form, one which will call Zapier and one which will call this URL. Okay? So to trigger this webhook, what do we need to do? We need to fill the form, right? Again. Okay, so Edward now. So let's trigger this webhook. So it should show up below in a few seconds. Did it show up in Trello? Yes. Okay, so the webhook arrived, and you can see the fields contained in the webhook. So as a developer, you receive this information, and you can do something with it. You can store it in the database or call the Trello API yourself if you want. Okay? So this is a way of debugging the webhooks. Okay, it's not magic, it's just an HTTP request going to somewhere, and you can see what's inside. Okay? So yeah, basically Zapier is a bit like that. It's like connecting stuff behind the scenes. Zapier, I think Zapier is free for up to 5 apps. We used to use it a lot at Le Wagon in the beginning when we didn't have a lot of time to implement our own tools. And then we shifted to implementing ourselves the webhook and the API part. Because at some point, configuring the Zaps, so Zapier dashboard, was taking more time than actually building yourself. So even as a developer, I used Zapier because it saves me some development. But when the balance was I spent too much time configuring the stuff, and sometimes I made mistake in configuring the Zap, so I lost some data, I said, okay, no more Zapier, now I will implement myself what I need. Okay, so it's a trade-off. And so it's good if you don't know how to code to start, automating tasks, trying to, from the workflows you already use, if you use tools like Slack, for instance, Slack is a great way. It's a great platform where you can push information. So it's a great candidate to use Zapier. But at some time, you will need to learn how to code because you reach the limit of Zapier. But you can spend a lot of time without reaching the limit. That's why it's great now. You can already automate a lot of stuff without knowing how to code. Any question on Zapier? Okay, so that's all for me tonight. Thank you for coming.